Welcome, Beth Davidson, to the Rock Shop Community Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening and checking it out. And thank you to the Rock Shop for supplying us with all this wonderful gear and the space to do it. And how are you, Beth?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. And thanks to the Rock Shop for supplying so much joy and music and fun to our community.
You're so welcome.
Such a welcome and giving and wonderful neighbor.
Thank you so much. It's so much fun having been here. So speaking of neighbors, you live in Nyack, I presume?
I do. I live in Nyack, the unincorporated part, not the village. So, there's like 5 Nyacks, and we're this forgotten one that's over on the other side of Old World Market off Mountain View. I'm your neighbor.
Oh.
But I'm on the Nyack side of Mountain View, not the Valley Cottage side.
Oh, do you know where that split is?
I think it's not too far after our street, Sugar Hill Road.
Oh, wow. That's interesting because I think my son and ex-wife live in Nyack, technically. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that border is. And they live in one of those condos over there. Anyway, so did you grow up in Nyack, Beth?
I did not. I grew up in Michigan.
Okay.
I was born outside of Detroit, lived there till I was about 4, and moved to a little town on Lake Huron called Port Huron.
Oh, Lake Huron, one of the Great Lakes.
It's one of the Great Lakes.
Michigan.
No salt, no sharks, no worries.
Yeah.
Just boats, bars, and a few weirdos. Got all our saying.
You have this down. You've said that before. Cool. So in Michigan, do you have brothers and sisters? Tell me a little bit about your family.
So I do. I have a brother and a sister. My brother lives in Texas, like near South Padre Island, but the mainland side. And my sister lives in Denver. And she just had a baby. So got a new nephew. Very exciting. Wow. But it's hard to be so far away from my siblings.
Right. Yeah. Mine are in Massachusetts and one in Ireland.
Oh, that's far.
Yeah, very far. But it was funny, actually. This dude came in yesterday from Ireland, and I was talking to him, and it turns out he's from Galway. Yeah. And then I started telling him about my brother and how I was in Galway before. And it was just like, wow, small world getting smaller. And he knew my family name, and it was pretty cool. Anyway, so in Michigan, outside of Michigan, Lake Huron, and what'd you do there? What was your childhood like?
It was pretty much your, Gen X childhood, watching my brother and my sister. I went to Catholic school, until the 8th grade. My family was always pretty musical. Uh-huh. So I played the piano. My brother played, the trumpet, and my sister played the trombone, and she still plays the guitar very beautifully, like a Joni Mitchell kind of. She has a beautiful voice.
Cool.
So always music in the house. And then in high school, I was more of a theater kid, DJ'd on my high school radio station. A lot of my friends played in bands, like the kinds you guys have here. So it's always really nice nostalgia to go to your shows because my friends were in, the bands and breaking up and joining each other's bands and who was dating who. And it was all that fun 80s scene. And to grow up outside of Detroit where there was so much cool music going on was also amazing.
Motor City.
Motor City.
So in Detroit, most gigs are car related, right? Did your parents work in the automobile industry?
My grandfather did. He worked for the Packard Auto Company, and we still have his old office chairs in our house, which is cool. My uncle did as well, worked for GM. But my dad's side of the family is all attorneys. But we definitely went and spent a couple weeks with my grandparents in Detroit, right outside of Detroit every summer. It's a really cool place to hang out. And in Detroit, yes, autos, rock and roll, but also the punk scene was really kind of co-born there with New York. People know less about that, but the Knack.
Right, the Knack came out of there?
Came out of there, and the Romantics.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's really funny. I got to tell you this story, the Knack story that I have.
Please.
So it's not even my story. It's a vicarious story through my friend Monty, who's going to be on my other podcast, I hope. So Monty was in a band called Who Brought the Dog, which is, and then they changed it to Dog Voices. But they were very, very popular in the Jersey Shore in the 90s. And, for 20 years they played the band. And one of the stories he told me is that he had a residency at the Shell down on the Jersey Shore. And so he was supposed to play there once a month every Saturday, one Saturday every month. And so one Saturday, the Knack was coming to town. and they said, hey, we want to play at the Shell. And so the owner of the Shell said to Monty, hey, man, you can't play tonight. The Nyack is going to play. And he said, hey, that's not fair. This is my gig. I would have booked something else, you know. So they ended up agreeing that Monty would open for the Nyack. So they all showed up to the Shell, and the Nyack had taken over the green room and the dressing room, and Monty and his band couldn't use what they had, been accustomed to using. And the Nyack had their whole crew and the tour bus there, and they wouldn't let them back there. So then other things happened where they were just being disrespectful and mean to Monty and his band. So what they did is, when they went to open for them, they played My Sharona as the first song.
That's a baller move.
And then the Nyack heard this and came pouring out of the green room, and a melee erupted on stage.
Beer bottles thrown.
Yes, amplifiers falling to the floor. Oh man. Anyway, sorry to make this about me.
No,
it's you said the Nyack. Tell me more about the punk scene in Michigan. I know nothing about it. You said most people don't know about it.
Well, it was a little bit before my time, but we were definitely listening to all that music. And then, I like all kinds of music, but we had a lot of good live venues to go see music at. So New Order, Depeche Mode, all the way over to, we had huge stadiums where like Aerosmith, Madonna. I'm trying to think of the other acts I went to go see. But music was just always a big part of my childhood and growing up.
Great. And so what venues were these people playing at? Anything like a la CBGB's, but the Detroit version of it, kind of?
Yes, although by the time I was old enough to go to bars, I was in college, and so it was more. But Ann Arbor had a cool music scene too, where it was more. But I saw Jamiroquai, either Verve or Verve Pipe. Don't sue me, I can't remember which. It was college. There was a band called a bar called The Blind Pig, and lots of other cool venues. And then I moved to DC right after graduation, and lots of great clubs and fun stuff to do there. Right.
I played once in Michigan in Saginaw. I don't know where that is related to anything else, but I know that's
for those of you watching, on the video. That's more like over here. I grew up here. Do I even have the right hand? Yes. But yeah. There's Madonna grew up in Bay City, which is not far from Saginaw, so there must have been some music there.
Yeah. And then DC, but okay. Before we go there, your dad was an attorney, and his whole side of the family. Like, what kind of law did he practice?
Family law, contracts, not very exciting. Pretty much everything except divorces and criminal.
Right.
So
Great.
He was always home for dinner at 6:00.
Nice. That's great. I wish I could say the same. Yeah. Owning a business is ridiculous. Yeah. Okay. So you graduate. What did you study in college?
Political science. I studied a lot of different stuff, but I ended up focusing on political science and women's studies. And
did you have any like really lofty goals at around that time, or were you just kind of like, I'm studying this for whatever?
I was definitely always interested in politics. When I was a junior in high school, I moved to DC for a semester to work as a page. Mm-hmm. So again, like so 80s, like my parents basically like slow down to 20 and I get out on Capitol Hill, and go live by myself at 15 with a bunch of other kids. And so I always knew that government was interesting to me, but I also just liked DC as a city. So I always kind of planned to move either there or Chicago after college. Mm-hmm. And so it was a pretty easy transition and just a great town.
And you were always just interested in politics. Did you have any really I'm going to be the governor of Alabama or something?
No, I never saw myself as a candidate myself. But I loved working on campaigns. I was really inspired by women candidates in particular. I worked on and off for over a decade for a group called Emily's List, which raises money for pro-choice Democratic women candidates for House, Senate, and governor. And so by the time I got that job, I was really hooked. I had applied to law school, was waitlisted, didn't get in, and I planned to apply, but then I really got caught up working on campaigns and kind of forgot about it, much to my dad's chagrin.
Oh, no.
No one to take on the family firm, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, you have a family firm?
Yeah, it's been around since 1896 or something.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, so, what's it called?
At the time, it was Davidson, Staker, Adair & Hill.
Oh.
So... yeah.
It's fascinating. Law firms just blow my mind. Like, oh, this guy's really good at family law. This guy's really good at divorces, whatever.
It's great. Like my dad was always the one that people called when, like, you know, we were in college and our landlords were trying to, you know, stiff us on our security deposit. Like he was always writing some, letter, gently pressuring letter to some, somebody of one of our kids, one of us that needed help.
That's great.
It's handy.
Yeah, it is handy. It is.
And he still is always like, my husband calls him for advice. We all call him for advice because when you're a lawyer, it really all sticks up in your brain.
Right.
Everything. Yeah.
You just know what to do.
Yep.
That's amazing. Okay. So you're in Washington, D.C. I don't know anything about Washington, D.C. other than there's a club there called the Hamilton that I played at.
Oh, right. I've never been to that one.
It kind of looks, it's like a TGI Fridays. It's weird. You're like, why is this here? It's like if BB King's in Manhattan was like run by a chain.
Okay.
So anyway.
Like Planet Hollywood or the Hard Rock Cafe, which we've had both of those in DC.
Yeah. So something like that. Okay. So you're in DC. Are you in DC like the District of Columbia, or are you like outside of it?
No, in the city. And again, in the 90s, it was very different than it is today. It was still like, decent amount of kind of the Wild West, decent amount of crime, really. Like I lived in a very gritty at the time neighborhood called Adams Morgan, which also had a lot of fun bars and restaurants and music venues. And yeah, so it was a lot of fun. But the last time I went and visited, there were like, those bicycle strollers like hooked up to the trees. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a very different neighborhood.
Slightly gentrified.
Exactly. So just, bounced around, lived in a group house with a bunch of randoms. Like that was something like, we did back then, in different apartments with different friends. But until I just reached 10 years with Nyack, previously that was the longest I'd ever spent in one place as an adult. Oh. So it's still kind of home.
Oh, right on. So how many years did you spend in DC?
8.
8. Okay, great. So you did 8 years in DC, 10 years in Nyack.
Well, we lived in Nyack for 3 years, and then we moved about a year after my daughter was born to Paris. Mm-hmm. And we lived there for 2 years, and then we lived in England for 3 years. That's where my son Hugo was born. So I have been to Ireland. It's quite beautiful. We went over there and we lived there, and then moved back to Nyack in 2013.
Wow. Fascinating. So how did you get to go to Paris? You guys were just like, let's go to Paris.
My husband's always worked for big international companies, Jeff, for those of you who might know him. And so at the time he was working for Dannon, and we were just kind of hanging out, waiting to see if there would be a cool international assignment. And it's based in Paris. So that's how we landed there.
Okay. And when you go to Paris, do you speak French?
Un petit peu.
Uh-huh.
But you got free immersive lessons through Berlitz, which I did for about 6 months. And then I just kind of, as long as I could order in a restaurant, make my way around the different stores and markets. And I was generally okay.
Cool. And like, were you trying to make friends out there?
Actually, it was really easy to make friends because you'd be at a playground, you'd hear somebody with a, English or American accent, and immediately, especially if you've got kids the same age. Right. So I had a nice crew of friends. Yeah.
That's great. Just buds.
Yeah,
nice.
So we're still in touch.
Nice. That's amazing. Amazing. Yeah. And you were 2 years in Paris, and you said your husband was working for what?
Dannon Yogurt.
Oh, okay.
Danone, as it is over there. And then they had a baby food job open up in Bath, England. Uh-huh. And we just figured, not quite ready to come home. Let's jot over there. So we lived in, and it's a beautiful, if anyone watches Bridgerton, a lot of it is filmed in Bath. Just gorgeous, beautiful. And
you had kids at this point?
I had Josie, and then Hugo was born while we were in Bath. So he's, officially, I guess, a natural born American citizen, but he was born over there. So if he ever wants to run for president, it could be tricky.
Oh, I see. He's technically not born on American soil, which is kind of a baller move, really, because you could just like, let's go over here and have this child, and then they become a citizen of whatever country. And then it's probably pretty easy to get official American citizenship.
Yeah, it was harder. It would have been harder to get him British citizenship. You have to live there for like 7 years, and my husband would have had some kind of visa. So he does not have a dual passport, sadly.
Oh, yes. Right.
Josie had a really cute accent, as you can imagine. She did. It was super cute.
What was it like?
It's like, hey, are you going to put that in the post? I cut myself. I need a plaster. Because she went to school, because I had a little baby. So I left her in like school and aftercare. So she spent, most of her day with other British folk.
Oh, lovely. And she's got a ladder in her stocking, is it?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Right. Well, I have the Irish background, so I know a lot of that jargon as well, which is super cute. So, okay. So then you're in England and you decide, all right, let's move back stateside. And how did you land in Nyack?
So we had lived in Nyack before we went, and it's very random how we ended up here. We were just looking at places to get married. And back then there was like a platform that New York Magazine had, like a little database where you could put in like, I'm having X amount of people and I want to spend X amount of dollars, and they spit back like what you can afford and what's a cool place. And so we looked at the Grand Prospect Hall in Brooklyn, where we did get married, the Women's Democratic Club in White Plains, and the Nyack Seaport. And we'd never been here. We just, like so many do from Manhattan, just kind of tooted up here one afternoon. And we were early for our appointment. So we had breakfast at, I think it was called the Skylark at the time. It just said restaurant off the top, and walked around a little bit. And I had never wanted to leave the city. I was one of those, like, I just want to live in the city forever. But then I was looking around, I was like, well, this kind of looks like Michigan, with the water and the cute little stores and buildings. So we just kind of kept looking we didn't end up getting married here, obviously. But we just kept looking at houses and looking in the New York Times, the paper at the time, and coming and looking at open houses, and then eventually found one in 2005 and moved up. And there's a lot of Michiganders here, if you haven't noticed. Yeah,
I have actually noticed. You're, I think, the third one I know.
I'm at least the second you've interviewed for this podcast.
Yeah. And I think there's another guy. I think my friend Taylor is from Michigan. I can't quite remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Taylor Jackson.
Yeah.
We all know each other. We got a secret handshake.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Cool. So you said you were in the city at one point before you moved here?
Yeah. So after I lived in DC for a long time, as I said, I had met my husband at that point, and he was living in LA. And so we did the bi-coastal thing for a bit, dating, and then New York to DC. And then eventually we realized we kind of had to be in the same place. And I had always wanted to live in New York at some point. So it made sense to me to move up.
Bi-coastal dating.
Yeah. It was wild.
How did you pull that off?
We just tried to see each other like every 3 weeks. It was either him going there or me coming here.
Oh, every 3 weeks. That's pretty amazing.
Actually, sorry, no. When it was bi-coastal, it was more like once a month.
Okay, still, that's amazing.
And then we traveled together for a wedding. He invited me to a wedding in Scotland. And so that was like the real test.
Right. How many, like a whole week?
It was almost 2 weeks. And we started in the wedding in Scotland, and then we ended up like getting Eurail. We like flew to Barcelona and took the train to Amsterdam, and I don't even know. I'd never been to Europe like really by myself without my family, so I wanted to do everything. So that was the test, and you have your like skirmishes traveling, and like how do you handle those, and you figure out like who's the panic person and who's the steady person, and that stayed pretty much the same.
And who's who?
I'm actually the steady person because like you just have to. Moms have to compartmentalize. I wasn't even a mom back then, but like I just have that compartmentalizing brain that, just calm down. Like, let's figure this out.
Zoom out.
Maybe I'm the oldest child. He's the youngest child. That might be part of it.
Well, I'm the youngest child. I'm also, I like to think I'm pretty good at zooming out of a situation. Like, nothing is screwed up here. We're okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he panics. Yeah. Cause that is a big test, traveling, especially traveling with young children. I remember one trip to Ireland, and I'm like carrying a car seat on the plane with me.
Oh yeah, I'd zip it into the thing, and then that would be my backpack.
Yeah.
While I would push the kid in the stroller.
Yeah.
And then somebody's somehow dragging also a suitcase. I don't even know how I did it because I went by myself a lot.
Wow.
Because Jeff would be working, and I'd come back to stay with my parents for like a week.
Wow. And you got to gate check everything. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But you stayed calm. You zoomed out and you did that. That's great. Okay, great. So you're in Manhattan. What part of Manhattan did you live in?
We lived on the Upper West Side.
Okay.
Around 76th.
Wow, that's fun. I don't know enough about Manhattan. I live so close to it, and my wife and I were like, oh, let's go check it out. Let's go spend some time there. We went there and we were like, oh, this is terrible. Nobody's holding the door for us. Like, let me get in that elevator. Close, So I'm much happier here in Nyack. Okay, so you get from, let's see the timeline here. We're in Michigan. You visit DC for summer.
Then, a semester.
A semester.
Yeah.
Okay, then you come back to Michigan. Then you say, I'm going to DC. Then after DC is Manhattan, or DC is...
So I skipped where I did 2 campaigns. One, I went and lived in Cincinnati for 6 months, working for a congressional campaign. And then I also worked in Michigan for a senatorial campaign right around, because I spent like 1999. I spent Y2K there, so it was 99, 2000.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Y2K throwback.
Exactly.
So which campaign were you working on when you were there?
That was, her name's Debbie Stabenow. She's still a senator from Michigan. This is her last term. She's retiring at the end of this year, and she's awesome.
And what did you do on this campaign as far as working?
I did opposition research. I did some press.
Mm-hmm. Opposition research is like when you're researching the other candidate to dig up dirt kind of thing?
But it's usually less exciting than that. Just like votes they took versus contributions they took, and try to show, he took X amount from Shell and then voted to relax regulations on drilling or whatever.
I see. Doesn't everyone do that?
You try not to. And most Democrats at this point, I'm a Democrat for anyone listening, don't take PAC money at all. So it's easier to say or to be independent.
Okay, that's good.
When you don't take money from corporate interests.
I kind of thought they all just did that.
We don't all. But somebody's enemy is someone else's friend. So people would say that taking money from organized labor is a certain kind of right. You took so much money from teachers and voted X or whatever. We just all tend to have our sides of who, we think we should be allied with.
Sure.
So I did that. I did a little bit of press, like setting up events, and really just kind of following the candidate around, helping her with speeches, talking points, all that kind of stuff. It's fun.
That sounds fun. And then what was like the most high profile candidate you've worked with?
Well, I still work for a bunch of political candidates. So after my daughter was born, I decided I couldn't commute into the city anymore. So I just hung my own shingle and started writing direct mail, which is like those flyers you get in the mail or the letters you get asking for money. But at the time, it was really just the flyers, and then also the emails you get asking for money. And I just kept doing it. I was able to do it through living in Europe because I was always 5 hours ahead. So it was easy to keep working over there, just enough to be a mom and enjoy being in Europe, but also just maintain. Moms often fall into what's the brain drain, where you drop out of the workforce and it's hard to get back in. So I was able to keep working enough. And so I still work for a bunch of amazing candidates. Cory Booker, right next door, senator from New Jersey. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, who's amazing. I have written stuff in the past for, Hillary Clinton, and I don't think I ever did anything for Barack Obama, but we're all on the same team at some point or another.
Right on. And which one, when you were doing Cory Booker, what are you doing? You're writing emails and letters and stuff for them? It's just
kind of talking about his record and what he cares about. And he's a really positive person. So those are actually really fun to write. And he's my age, and I've been following him for so long. It's like we're all on this journey together, watching him become an amazing leader.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. And what's the most fun part of doing that?
I just like writing. I find it really, interesting and satisfying. And then when you're, helping someone in real time, pursue their own goals of running for office. Politics has gotten to be a very cynical business, but I'm what what my old boss used to call a true believer. And so I really, as I said, I've been doing it since I was 15, and I liked it back then because I sort of saw the wheels turning and what was possible rather than impossible. If people, really got together for the good of the people. And I feel like it's hard to see that sometimes these days, but I feel like I'm contributing at least and trying to make a positive difference.
That's great. So you're actually allowed to have an opinion.
Yeah, I have many.
I bet. It's just, to me, it's fascinating that there's so much behind that curtain. And it's really interesting to hear about what you do because, I would never think that's a whole position. And you said you're working on multiple campaigns, and essentially, is it kind of like a work from home, but you also have to do events kind of thing?
It's almost all from home unless I want to go to an event. I'll probably go to DC in a few weeks for a big conference that a lot of people will go and schmooze at. But I traveled more before the pandemic, but now really almost everyone works remotely, even if they're running a small firm. So yeah, it's been a great. I'm really lucky to be able to have that kind of job, and could always pull my kids off the bus every day and spend time with them and drive them around to all their activities. it's really lucky.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So mom / what's your actual title?
Just call myself a freelance writer / consultant, because I also do consult on, bigger ideas for campaigns, what we should be talking about, that kind of stuff.
So you really know how all this works.
Yeah. I mean, it's always changing. So that's like the exciting part too, is that parts of it look nothing like when I started out in terms of, new media and podcasts and blogs. I mean, blogs are sort of over, but those were big for a while. And so it's been, digital media versus the TV commercials. It's just been an interesting time to watch it all evolve.
Right.
And I also work for a number of nonprofits. So I've written for Sandy Hook Promise, which is a gun prevention organization, as well as the Brady Campaign, which is also a gun control organization. That's a huge issue for me. Various food banks, Bread for the City, which is an anti-hunger organization in DC. So it's been a nice balance.
That's amazing. Yeah. So you got a lot going on. Right on. So then what's your official title as far as what you have now as in your political career?
Yeah. So I said I never wanted to run for anything. And I was always happy to be the person behind the scenes. And that really changed in 2017 when I decided to run for school board. I was talking to other folks who might want to run and offered to run their campaigns. And then I just got anxious and decided I was going to run myself. And that was, it was weird. The first time I picked up a yard sign with my own name on it, it was just bizarre. But I really enjoyed serving on the school board. It was really fulfilling. Nyack is a really special place, as you know, having kids here. And then when a county legislative seat opened up, Harriet Cornell had held it for 40 years. And so when she decided she wasn't going to run again, she really wanted a woman, because there's only 3 women out of 17 members of the Rockland County Legislature. So it was important to her that a woman replace her. And so I was kind of on a committee looking for candidates. And then when I looked at the district and that it was the Village and Central Nyack and our slice of Valley Cottage, and then some parts of New City that I knew would have to, and Bardonia, West Nyack, that I knew I'd have to get to know, it just seemed like a good fit. So now I serve as your Rockland County Legislator, District 10. Mm-hmm. In New City, and no one knows what that is.
I don't know what that is. Tell me what that is.
So, Rockland County, our legislature is a relatively new body. It's about 30 or 40 years old. It used to be just all the town supervisors would kind of run the county, and then they formed a county legislature. If Ed Day is the president of Rockland County, the legislature is Congress. So we appropriate funds, pass laws that help determine how the county runs. It's a lot of appropriating funds to different nonprofits and programs. If I get into the weeds of one of our meetings, it's a lot of making sure folks have the resources they need to serve people in our community. But I also have things I want to work on. I'm working on a gun safety prevention law modeled after one that passed in Westchester and a couple other counties in New York. I'm working on some environmental initiatives. My colleague Dana Stilley, who was just elected, and I want to work on a task force looking at Black maternal health here in the county, because it's been covered in the news but hasn't really had a countywide response. So these are things that, representation matters. You bring your own perspectives and your own life experiences, and that's something the legislature has not yet tackled, and we'd like to turn some attention to that. So those are just some of the things we can do. But the county, takes care of county roads, various health services, things that everyone relies on but doesn't really think about.
Right, like garbage.
That's actually the town of Clarkstown where we are, the Village of Nyack. But we run the recycling. So it all comes to us. It all comes to us eventually.
Right. So when you said you were working on like a gun control thing for Rockland County, that's kind of like your project that you bring into like your bill, so to speak?
Yes. I mean, it was, I ran for legislature with 4 other candidates. 3 of us won, and we had a platform of things we really cared about that we worked together on. And one of them was requiring that every firearm sold in Rockland County be sold with a warning of the additional risks of having a firearm in the home, of suicide, homicide, or accidental death, and then also having the suicide prevention hotline right there. And since I've been in office, there have been 2 tragedies that we don't need to get into, but I feel like it's, it's not going to save everyone, but if it saves one person, I think that's worth it, and just brings home the connection between public health and gun safety and mental health and gun safety. Those are intersections that people talk about all the time. And this is one small way, you'll hear over and over on the news, like, there's nothing we can do. Well, this is one thing I can do
right
in this position. So I'm determined to get it done.
Right. And so what does that entail? Determining to get it done? Like,
I'm going to have to get people on board to build coalitions. That I do know how to do from being in this community for so long. There's a really active gun safety group called Moms Demand Action for Gun Safety in America in Rockland. And so they're really active. So I'll get their help. We can pack the chamber with supporters if we need to. But I think this is a common sense thing that people will go along with. I'm hopeful.
When will that be voted on?
It's still being drafted. I'm hoping by the end of the year at the latest.
Okay, so you'll draft it yourself?
No, it's being drafted by
committee
staff.
Yeah. Okay, so the staff drafts it, and then you argue it. You bring it.
I'll present it to. I think it'll go through. Haven't done this yet. So we don't pass that many original local laws. So I haven't actually seen one go through yet. But I think it'll probably be, discussed at the public. It'll go through the Public Safety Committee, I would think, and then be discussed by the full legislature and hopefully pass.
And then, so when you're trying to pass something, you said there were 17 members. So,
and there's this Democratic supermajority for the first time ever. So there's 12 Democrats and 5 Republicans.
Okay, so that's going to get passed once it gets there.
It'll get passed, and if it were to get vetoed, we would have the votes to override that.
Like Ed Day could veto it,
right? But if we wanted it to happen, we could override that.
You could override.
That's the importance on lots of issues that we want to get done. Whether it's funding, whether it's nonprofits, whether it's issues that any one of us care about, it's nice to have that supermajority.
Right. So you can push through some important stuff that might have been vetoed by an Ed Day. Is he Democrat or Republican?
He's a Republican, and we're actually we've worked together on a couple of things already. So look, I ran for office saying I will work with anybody that has a good idea to make our community a better, safer, healthier place, and I'm sticking to it.
Nice. And so he's easy to work with?
We haven't worked together that closely yet, but so far we've worked together on a couple of environmental things, and I think it will go forward from there.
I think you got the right idea. If somebody's got a good idea, who cares what side of the aisle they're on? And if somebody, also let's let the good ideas win.
Yes.
If somebody has bad speech or a bad idea, the only cure to that is better speech and better ideas. It's not shaming the other thing. So I like that. I'm really happy you said that.
That's right. And local issues, county issues, honestly should not be partisan. As we've said, it's roads, it's garbage, it's, we do have a lot of environmental issues here, as we've all seen with the storms and the flooding, and
right.
And I'm the chair of the environmental committee, so I also chair the water task force. So figuring out, if we're starting to run out of water, excuse me, what do we do about that?
What do we do about that?
We've got to do a lot of conservation initiatives. We've got to look at big water users and how they take their usage way down with everything from more efficient appliances to, filters to, not watering so often during the summer. You can make a lot of changes around the edges that make a decent impact.
Right on. What's your most passionate thing that you're working on with the legislator right now that you're just so excited you could talk for 45 minutes about it?
There's a lot that's more exciting than you would think. I'm definitely, very excited about this gun safety initiative. If I can get it through.
What's that look like as far as timeline goes?
As I said, I hope it will be done by the end of the year. This is when the budget is coming together. We just received Ed Day's his planned budget for the year, and so that's always kind of a busy time. But I'll be persistent and make sure it gets written and in front of us. Like I said, hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay.
I think that'll be a good first year accomplishment.
Yeah. This is your first year, right?
That's my first year.
Yeah.
So that'll be exciting. I would love to, I've got other long-term goals. I would love a junior human rights. We have a human rights commission. I would love a junior human rights commission. This is such a diverse county. And when you see kids from all over the county get together, my daughter is in a couple of different groups like that. It's so exciting. And you hear them talk and you feel like, oh my gosh, if they could solve some of our problems faster than we could. I was a mentor. There were a lot of Nyack people actually that were mentors at this environmental symposium a couple of weeks ago, and it brought together kids from all over the county, and they had to figure out how to plan if there was if we wanted to put housing at the Nanuet train station, because transit-oriented development, like I really am a nerd. I could talk about transit, I could talk about development, but transit-oriented development is super exciting. And being on both the environmental and transit committees, I'm hoping I can work on that. But the idea is that more people will want to move here if they have this easy train ride into the city, which is supposed to be we're supposed to eventually get a 1-seat ride. And then what does that look like? How do we plan? So I was, as a mom, I was trying to help them think like, what would you want if you're a new family moving here? What do we want to put in this development? And they were just sort of like, huh? And I was like, maybe daycare, maybe, animal care, people are going to want to
playground.
Yeah, exactly. And so, grocery store. And so it was exciting to see them sort of think about the future and what that looks like. And, this is such a divisive time, and to see kids from all backgrounds and zip codes just get together and work together and not be bogged down by all the noise is really inspiring.
It's amazing.
I love being around kids.
Yeah, me too. It's amazing. I love it too. Obviously, one of my favorite things is I have a band, and none of the kids go to the same school.
Yeah.
One kid is 12, and he's a big 12, and then there's another kid who's 11, and he's a small 11, and they're like tight. Is
this Ride on the Horizon?
No,
this is a different one.
No, this is they're Ride on the Horizon's teens.
That's what I thought. Cheryl's son one.
It's Dynamite. That's the name of this
Dynamite.
band.
Oh, I've seen that one too.
Yeah, this is crazy, but it's just so fun because they're all from different. One guy's from Stony Point, one guy's from Blauvelt, one's from Nyack. It's just great to see them all getting together. One's from New City, so it's cool. I love that.
I try to involve youth voices as much as I can in anything I do, and I've definitely brought that to the legislature. I was the first legislator who was instructed to kick off we have a convocation at the beginning of the meeting. And
What's that mean?
Convocation, it's
sorry.
It could be anything from like a prayer to it's just whatever you do before the Pledge of Allegiance. There are people who actually kind of think like, oh, should we be opening with a prayer? And then when I read the instructions, it said it could be whatever I wanted. So I had she sang last night. Her name is Kat Deli. She goes to Nyack Middle School. She's a really talented singer and performer. So I had her come in and read Amanda Gorman's The Ode We Owe, which is about the environment, because it was, and it was Black History Month. So it all just seemed to fit together, and she did a great job. And I could tell everyone was kind of like, huh, that's different. Nice. We've never had that before.
Nice.
And so, I'll always look for opportunities like that too. Cause if kids get more invested, they'll want to hopefully stay involved, live here, give back, make a contribution.
Right.
That's what we need.
Convocation. That's a fun word. Yeah. So it's like just something.
I'm sorry. It's invocation. I used the wrong word. I told you I didn't have enough coffee. I think convocation is something when you're graduating from college. It was an invocation.
Invocation. So that's just kind of like a ceremonial, but like not necessarily religious, just kind of a ceremonial thing you would say before something commences.
Yes. Let's put some good energy into the room before the meeting kind of thing. Yeah.
That's fun. I like that. An invocation.
Yep. Yeah,
I might steal that. Cool. So then you're trying to involve youth in government, or just youth just involved in the community? What's
all of it. If I'm ever, doing any kind of project, and that's because I always liked having my kids with me. So, so many of the things I've done in the community have been trying to involve my kids. So, my daughter and I have done stuff for Nyack Center. My son is about to have his bar mitzvah. And so he's making a cool origami installation for the Pride Center. And so really, it's just been like one more way that we do things together as a family, is to be involved in the community. And I didn't necessarily grow up like that. I grew up in like kind of a medium-sized town, and we were all just kind of busy. But this is, as you know, a small community where, it's almost impossible not to get involved in something unless you really don't want to. But there's just always something fun going on that you can get involved with, and that's been the case for us for sure.
Right. And what's on the horizon in the future for you? Are you going to hang in there with what you're doing now, or do you have any loftier goals?
I'm really happy being the county legislator. I mean, I'm still sort of sinking my teeth into it and figuring out what it's all about. But I think it's going to be an equally fulfilling role. I'm definitely kind of a policy nerd, so I love digging into. We're also working on another thing I could talk about forever is housing, which is a huge issue for Rockland County.
Yeah.
So I'm
really
vice chair of and that's another thing of having like new blood in a supermajority is we have our first ever housing committee. There was never a housing committee on the legislature. So it's housing and economic development, and I'm the vice chair of that. So we're looking at, just ways to creatively, Nyack has limited space, but we still need more housing. So how do we do that in a way that's still affordable and accessible for families so that we maintain the kind of community that we all love?
Right. Myself and Don Hammond were talking about that.
Yep.
And
It's Don is our former mayor, and he's very passionate about this issue.
yeah. And you should be, because like I was telling him, and I'll tell you, it's for me and my buddies who are all musicians, not all of them, but most, we all used to live here in Nyack and rent in the village. And then they all got priced out.
Yep.
And I don't know how I figured it out, but I got someplace in Valley Cottage, but I'd rather be here in Nyack, like in the village, but I'm fine with what I have. I love it. I'm very grateful and appreciative. But Don was saying there was a whole class of people like those musicians and artists and restaurant workers that are priced out.
Yeah.
And I mean, what could you possibly do to solve that? I have no idea.
There's a lot of ideas on the table in terms of like a housing trust fund where like municipalities can pay into it, and then it's in the weeds. But for developers to build more affordable units, there's ways that you could do what are called accessory dwellings, where like maybe an older person who doesn't want to let go of their home yet, but they could create there's a lot of houses in Nyack already have this, an accessory dwelling where it's like the basement apartment or whatever. And that would have, be something more affordable for, a single person or a small family to move into, and the senior can still take care of their homes, stay in their homes. But we also need more senior housing so the seniors have somewhere to go, right? And that opens up more housing stock for the rest of us. So, it's a big problem that we have to be really intentional in how we solve, that we don't make it worse by building lots of housing that still no one can afford. I mean, the market is just crazy.
It is crazy.
And it's also nice to know that we're in such a high demand place to live.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
I mean, it has its ups and its downs.
For sure. As a business owner, I see all the people moving into the $3,000, $4,000 a month apartments as a very good thing, because they're all very young families. Young families eventually have 8-year-old kids and 9-year-old kids and 10-year-old kids who are going to
play music.
They're going to come play music here. So I see it as a very, very good thing that all those apartments are here. I understand why other people do not, but personally for me, it's good.
Well, we don't want to be a school district that's shrinking, and we're one of the few that isn't.
That's good.
Yeah, when you're losing students, you're losing funding, you're shutting buildings. That's not a good direction to be going in. And Nyack has stayed really healthy. A lot of people moved here during the pandemic because
a ton.
I talked to a lot of them when they were thinking about it, doing lots of Zooms with my kids and their kids, and so it's nice to see that those families have taken root here and, are such a part of the community.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Lots of people from Brooklyn, lots of people from Manhattan and, the surrounding areas have moved here. And I think it's great. I think it did push out a lot of the people who were 20-something musician, artist people and stuff. But it's going to be hopefully kind of like cyclical in the sense that it'll be reborn when those people are older.
Right.
That's what I hope.
That's our hope.
Yeah. And so what's your biggest Nyack issue that you'd like to touch upon that you feel like we could solve with maybe some more community support or funding or something that you feel like is like very solvable?
That's hard. I mean, people want like a big community center, but I don't want to say that, the Nyack Center is amazing and does a lot for kids. The Y is amazing and does a lot for kids. But when I was knocking doors in Nyack, there was a lot of like, we don't have a pool. We don't have a big sports facility. We don't have a real theater. And so I think, there are public amenities that we could look, we're always looking at what could we do with the waterfront, which is not really a county issue. That's a village issue, but I would certainly, support in whatever way I could. And housing is wrapped in with that, right? Because that keeps our business community healthy. But I think, when we look at kids, especially, I'd love to see more amenities for kids. And I'm not quite sure how to solve it, but I'd be, super psyched to try.
Sure. Well, it's great to see the Memorial Parks getting an upgrade.
Yeah.
That's a good step. Yeah, the waterfront, just build me a theater down there and I'll run it and hire bands and play there.
I mean, growing up on a waterfront town where that was absolutely a thing, you'd go and spread out your picnic blanket and watch in a park with the water behind you.
Yeah.
Which we do that here too.
Yeah.
But to have a little more waterfront activity would be great.
Yeah. I would love to see that too, because it seems strange that our downtown is not on the water. It's like, why would you do that? the water's right there.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, it's interesting that on that side of the river they had the train, so everything kind of grew up around the train, and so there's like downtown's right on the water, and Tarrytown, Dobbs Ferry, all those smaller towns. But on our side, we didn't have it because of this is nerdy, but the Rockefellers wanted to preserve the Palisades, all those beautiful arching, cliffs as you're driving out from Manhattan, and so that's why we didn't have a train close to us, so that we could preserve all that land.
Oh,
but it definitely just made how our towns developed different.
Right. And there's always been talk of adding rail here, but no one's ever done it. And I don't know why. I don't know why that is. You might know.
I want a ferry. I'm on that team.
You're on the ferry team?
Yeah.
I love the ferry from Haverstraw to Ossining. Yeah.
But I don't know why we couldn't have one from here or Piermont, like all the way down. And actually my husband used to commute to 40 Wall Street, and he drove to Weehawken and took that ferry, and he loved it. But it's definitely like, that wouldn't have occurred to anybody. Yeah, that was a secret trick he learned from some other commuter.
Oh.
And so I wish, anyway, there's been many people who've wanted ferries over the years, and I'm one of those.
Yeah, why not?
It's only like 11 miles or something to the tip of Manhattan as the crow flies. It's crazy that it takes us so long to get there. It's much closer than we think.
Right.
Maybe it's 19 miles. It's under 20.
There you go.
As the crow flies. Yeah, maybe it's 19.
There you go. All right, right on, Beth. Is there anything else you want to touch upon before we wrap this up?
No, just how grateful I am to be part of the Rock Shop community, and that my kids both are so into music, and that you've brought some music to so much of our community. I'm really grateful.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for you too, and for your support here. You're always a breath of fresh air. Josie's always smiling, is always happy. Even though, she's a teenager and has teenager issues, she's always at least like trying really hard,
Yeah.
She's trying to be positive, which is incredible.
And you're never too old to learn something new. So I'm taking drum lessons myself. It was my promise to myself after the campaign, win or lose, I was going to learn to play the drums, because I always wanted to my whole life. And so that's been really fun and a good creative outlet. Yeah. You're never too old to challenge yourself.
No, you should. You absolutely should do hard things, especially as you get older, because you're just so used to getting so many wins. You put your clothes on, they go right on. Think about a little kid trying to do a button.
Right.
But as an adult, you get in your car, you tap the little button, you drive from A to B. It's just win, 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 win. You got to take a few losses. Yeah. You got to do something difficult, exercise, etc. So that's great that you're doing that. And thank you again for the support. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I hope everybody is having a wonderful time out there in Nyack, and this will come out in a few weeks. Thanks again, Beth.
Thanks, Dylan.
All right. Peace. Bye.